How do you coach owners who say, "We just need more leads"?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I tell owners that say that, if you're not making million at $2 million, if you're not making money at 2 million, you're not going to make money at 5 million or 10 million.
Hey, how's it going? It's Tim Brown, and this is the HVAC and Hustle podcast. And today we have Weldon Long on. It's been a while since I've been trying to get you on. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yes, sir. We're talking about 3 signs of HVAC lead addiction. And Weldon has a very interesting backstory, though, so I'm going to let you give it. I want to ask it in an interesting way. I know that you had a situation where somebody told God, or somebody said God told them that they should
Yeah.
fire you. I
Well,
want to open it up with that story.
yeah, that was actually pretty later in the story, but I'll kind of start there. So I got my first job in this industry in June of 2003 as a comfort advisor, and worked there about a year. Then was recruited away by another company here in town in Colorado Springs, where I live. And when the owner approached me, at a home show, and we talked a couple of times, and he came to me and he said, "Man, I'm going to tell you something." He's a very devoutly religious man. He goes, "God told me to hire you." I'm like, "That is sweet." Right? Because like I got some serious clout if God's
Yeah.
talking for me. I came in, I worked there about 3 months, built the sales team, implemented the sales process, did the whole thing. And unbeknownst to me, he got with the sales team without me there and said, "Hey, do you guys understand Weldon's system now?" Like, "Oh yeah, we got it dialed in, it's working." And he goes, "Great." And he called me in and fired me. When he fired me, he said, "God told me to fire you." And I said, "We'll just leave it. We'll call him Joe." And I said, "Joe, God doesn't change his mind in 90 days, but if you want to let me go, I'm perfectly fine with that." In fact, then he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I think I'm going to open my own company, because if you and the other guy I worked for can make it in this business, I'm pretty sure that I can." And he hated me every day since, but that was my first company. I opened up in 2004, grew that to $20 million in revenue, sold that in 2010. Somewhere in there, I'd written my first book, a little book called The Upside of Fear, which came out in 2009, was Writer's Digest Best Book of the Year, a New York Book Festival Best Autobiography. And like, wow, I mean, had a lot of success. And then I started speaking and training, consulting after I sold my company, wrote my second book, The Power of Consistency, hit number 5 on New York Times, number 2 on Wall Street Journal bestsellers list. And my third book was Consistency Selling, which is kind of the sales process. So the power of consistency is more the mindset, which is critically important to our success, and then the sales process. But the backstory to all of it, Tim, before I got in this industry, was I was a ninth grade high school dropout, living on the street, spent 13 years in prison. And when I got my first job in this industry in 2003, I was actually living in a halfway house
Hmm.
after 13 years in the penitentiary. But during that last 7 years in the penitentiary, had some momentous things happen in my life, unfortunately fueled by some very tragic things. My father passed away unexpectedly in 1996, but that was my wake-up call. And so I had 7 years left to do, but I spent those 7 years, devoted my life to understanding success principles and mindset principles. And so I completely had kind of an adjustment in the way I think and in the things I value and the processes I learned. Walked out of the penitentiary in 2003, was a man on fire, 39 years old, broken, homeless. But I came out swinging. I got my job. I opened that first business. I opened another one in 2019. Grew that to $42 million in sales in 5 years. Just sold that, and now I own 8 other HVAC companies in conjunction with my speaking and my traveling and my keynoting and all that business. So stay pretty busy, but I come from a place of poverty and struggle and difficulty, and that to me is one of the biggest assets that I have, because I know what it's like to struggle, for sure.
Mm. Me too, man. Me too. I'm grateful to have the opportunities I've got now, and I had my own form of struggles. I know a lot of people do that
Yeah.
are probably listening. So I want to go into this leads thing because I think it is a what do you call it? Siren song for some
Mhm.
people where they think that leads will fix their problem. And I
Yeah.
want to tackle this from a different angle. How do you coach owners who say we just need more leads?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I tell owners that say that, if you're not making million at $2 million, if you're not making money at 2 million, you're not going to make money at 5 million or 10 million, because making money doesn't have as much to do with the top line revenue. You should be making a profit at 1 million and 2 million if you're building your business according to the KPIs and kind of the industry standards in terms of overhead and cost of goods and things. You should make a profit at $1 million. You should make a profit at 2 million. You should make a profit at 5 million. If you're not making a profit at 2 million, it doesn't matter how many leads you have. Listen, there's two ways to build a business, and there's only two ways. Since we've been trading camels at the pyramids, only two ways to build business. Number one, go out and spend a ton of money, attract new customers. And that's what everybody wants to do because they seem like they think it's easy. And you spend a lot of money, it's some marketing money involved, as you know, then you got more customers, you need more employees, you need more service technicians, more trucks. And what I find is guys that do that, they end up growing their overhead and their expenses just as fast as the revenue. And so they're broke at 2 million in revenue and they're broke at 5 million at revenue. Now there's another way to build your business, which you should do both ultimately. But the first thing you have to do is to make sure that you're increasing your average ticket and that you're profitable in the jobs that you're doing, right? So it's about solving more problems for your homeowners. I always tell business owners that that leads are like our children. We should know where they're at. We should know exactly what's going on with them. And if you're not making money on your current leads, you're not going to make money on twice as many leads. So we got to fix the problem first of getting profitable. Then we go to guys like you and say, hey, I'm profitable. I have some money. Can you help me acquire more customers? But now you know how to be profitable on your customers. And if you think just more activity is going to increase the bottom line, that is the siren song. That's a fool's errand. You got to get better. You got to make sure that you have your departmentalized financials. You got to make sure that you're priced properly. You got to make sure that you're executing in the sales process and everything else is involved in one of these companies. And then when you get that shit dialed in, then you go to Tim and say, hey, Tim, I need another 1,000 leads a year. But until then, you're kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah, I always like those first couple million are hard no matter which way you spin it, even if you're trying to pay your way out of the box or whatever. Like there's a lot of sweat equity for a lot of young owners. I think this is why people get burned by agencies so bad sometimes. It's like
You,
you're trying to pay your way out of something that is sweat
right,
and hard work
right.
and like
Yep,
I'm not talking about the guy who got funded. I'm talking about the guy who had to bootstrap from absolute scratch.
yep.
That guy you got to do it. You got to do it all.
That's,
And you got like, it hurts. I get it, but I was there, right? Like
yeah,
having to go through that the first time is like it's it's the rite of passage as a small business owner. And then, like you say, like, cause I think about it as like pouring gasoline on something. If it's just coals and there's no fire yet, you could just
right.
douse the coals
Yep,
and then they're done.
yep,
So you got to pour gas on an existing fire, I think is what
right.
you're kind of
That's
saying as
exactly
well.
right. And that's the process. That's the you got to get the organization. Listen, there's 4 sections to your business: your financials, your income. You've got your human resources, your sales and marketing, your operations. You got to have all those dialed in before you can really, really start making money in this business. What I always say is that chaos and profitability do not mix. If you've got chaos in your financials, you've got chaos in your operations, you're going to struggle. But when you get those things dialed in, then you've learned how to make a profit. You've learned how to price properly, and you've learn how to sell properly, and now go out and spend a fortune on leads because you can do something with them. But until then, you're just spinning your wheels, as I said.
We're going to keep talking about the leads thing, but I want to take a diversion that's about us. But I bet there's some people out there that experience this as well. Sometimes the chaos is you, the business owner, as I am, because I'm always trying to come up with new stuff.
Right.
Visionary founder with a lot of ideas, and I
Mhm.
think I've found some smart guys that like they deposit those ideas in a sheet. I've learned to start to say, this is a brainstorm, not a to-do item for my team because I like to talk about new ideas and create. That's one
Yeah.
bad thing about being like the in the trenches business owner is sometimes I cause chaos by coming
Yeah.
up with new random initiatives that aren't necessarily as profitable as just sticking. There's a beauty. I'm learning this now, and this year I think is a good year for us where I'm just like stopping meddling in my
Mhm.
own business. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like once the systems are built, stopping meddling so much and just let it happen. It's good. It's getting good. Like let it happen. That's hard
Yeah.
to do sometimes as a business owner, though.
It is, but you hit on a very important point there. You gotta have that visionary leader, but you gotta have the implementers as well.
Mhm.
That book, Rocket Fuel, really goes into that about
Oh
how
yeah.
it takes both of those personalities to do it. I'm much like you, I'm a visionary. I'm not an implementer. I'm not the detail guy, but I've been fortunate to have some people around me that are really great at the implementing, you know. And but that's a great piece of advice, by the way. I think I should probably use that more often than not and say, this is not a to-do, this is a brainstorming session. You don't have to run out and try to get this done today. Let's think it through. And then we can talk about it something if we want to do it long term.
I have to say that a lot, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
very used to
Yeah.
saying it.
Yeah. But you
Um,
know what that requires, Tim, is it requires the ability to delegate. You mentioned about, guys getting stuck. And I mean, you've got to let go, you've got to delegate. You're going to hit the wall 3 or 4, maybe 5 million with if you're the bottleneck, there's just only so far you can go. And you got to delegate, you got to let people make decisions, you got to let people make mistakes. There's a very famous story in uh, uh, his name escapes me. He was the CEO of General Electric for many, many years. Wrote a great book when he retired. His name escapes me right now, which is crazy. But he tells a story in his book.
Jack Welch.
Of, Jack Welch, yeah.
I
And
just
the
Googled.
name of the book is Jack. The name of the book is Jack.
Yeah.
How ironic. But he tells a story of this business unit leader, manager comes in with a resignation letter, and he made some decision that cost him $10 million in losses. And he told Jack, he goes, here, I'm going to save you the hassle of having to fire me. And Jack's like, why would I fire you? I just spent $10 million on your education, right? Like, I need to keep you here, right? So I think it's really important as us as business leaders to delegate and let people make mistakes. And that's the only way to
Mhm.
grow. I mean, you got to, inspect what you expect, et cetera, and measure things and track the numbers. But you got to let people make decisions and do their own thing. If you try to control it, you'll cap out somewhere around 3 million. Typically, we find 3 to 4 million. You hit max capacity until you can start delegating and organizing.
Mm. All right. So let's say you've got this fire started. At what point do you know? Like, if you look at a home service business, and you're like, okay, you're ready to spend money on
Mhm.
marketing. Like, where is that point where they've got it down where you could just dump gas on it?
So Rilla allows you to listen to it's an AI in your pocket,
Yeah.
listens to the appointment. It's pretty crazy what it can do. It gives a script, gives everything they said, it breaks down some statistics for you.
Analyze talk ratio, interactivity, like how you and I are interacting back and forth. Long as modeling, like all those
Honestly,
things.
this is the shit that I most believe in AI.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Enhancing the
You're
human
about to put
experience.
math and data around something that used to be my magic skill.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are some key metrics that I wouldn't call them KPIs because they're not really industry standards, but they're my standards. When I find a company that's generating on average on a maintenance call, for example, $1,000 average ticket and 1,500 average ticket on a demand call. Now that includes tech turn revenue. That includes the revenue from, repairs that are turned to the sales department. But if you're generating about $1,000 on each maintenance call, $1,500 on each demand call, and roughly around 6,000 what I call revenue per lead on your new sales opportunities. Revenue per lead is not average ticket; it's the average revenue per lead. So if I give a guy 10 leads and he puts up 50,000, he's averaging 50,000 revenue per lead.
Mm.
So I look for 5 to 6,000 revenue per lead. Now you're clicking pretty good. I look for 1,500 on demand repairs, again, including the tech turn revenue, 1,000 on the maintenance tickets,
How
including tech turn
unusual is
revenue.
this, by the way? I'm sorry, like, just I don't fully understand, and I also feel like there's
Yeah,
probably an objection in some of the audience's head. They're like, "Wow, that sounds crazy." I'm
yeah, it
sure some
does.
people feel that way.
Yeah,
So,
because
how
that
common or uncommon is this?
it's very uncommon.
Okay.
It's very uncommon, and it's why 80% of the companies in this industry are struggling from just month to month to month to month. We like to see labor rates somewhere between $400 and $500. People are charging labor rates still of $150. There's tons of industry research that shows it takes about $300 to $350 to run a maintenance call. When you all in overhead, everything, and if you go in there and do a $79 maintenance, you walk in and that's all you do, and you walk out. I mean, obviously you're losing money on every single call. So what we have to do is we have to get our technicians and our comfort advisors, that we have to take a broader perspective to the house. And one of the metaphors, stories I use a lot is if you went to the doctor fixed your shoulder, gave you a shot, fixed you up good as new, but the next day you have a massive heart attack. It almost kills you. Puts you in the hospital, you're in intensive care, lots of heart damage, heart muscle damage, your family's freaked out, you might die. You think you might die, you're not working, you're not making money, and while you're in the intensive care unit, your cardiologist tells you one day, and it's too bad we didn't see this heart attack coming because I could have given you this little clot buster pill and saved all this heart damage and all this stress. You're like, well, doc, I didn't know. It hit me out of left field. The next day, you see your shoulder doctor walking through the hospital corridor, and you give him a shout out, hey, shoulder doc. And he looks in and you, and it says, sees you on the tubes and all the monitors, and said, dude, what the hell happened to you? Yeah, doc, it's the craziest thing. The day after you fixed my shoulder, I had a massive heart attack. Damn near killed me. I've been here 3 weeks. The shoulder doctor says, yeah, well, I'm not the least bit surprised. I thought you were going to have a heart attack the day you were in my office. And you say, doc, you knew I was fixing to have a heart attack? He's like, a first-year medical student could see you were fixing to have a heart attack. Your heart was arrhythmic, heart rate through the ceiling, blood pressure. He goes, in fact, I was watching you through my office window. I was surprised you made it back to your car. It was crazy. And you say, doc, if you knew I was fixing to have a heart attack, why the hell didn't you tell me? I could have taken this clot buster pill. And the doctor looks at you and says, hey, you came to see me about your shoulder, not your heart. How would you feel about your doctor? But how often do we walk in and we fix the shoulder and walk out without looking for the heart attacks in the house? You know, we have to take a more comprehensive approach to every service call, every sales call. When you're doing that, you're maximizing the opportunities. Those are the numbers I'm talking about. Now you're ready to grow your business and to pour the fuel on it that you're talking about, Tim.
I appreciate that. I want to elaborate into, we're just talking about a little bit about sales, but it does affect the install culture when there is separation, the sales versus install culture right now. How do you create a more united team? You have a story about how you turned a divided sales versus install culture into a united team. And
Yeah.
like, what would you do differently now?
Well, let's talk about what I did and then what I would do. So I think the first step is acknowledging this natural conflict. You've got salespeople who are kind of right-brained. You've got the installers who are left-brain, logical, technical. And so there's a natural disconnect communication-wise with those guys anyway. Then, you know how when you get in kind of an isolation, if you're the sales guy, you think the installers are just complaining all the time. And if you're the installer, you think that the salespeople are idiots because they can't take basic measurements. And there's a constant conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is both groups really care about quality and the homeowners. So what I started doing years ago is putting them in the room once a month for breakfast and making them start having conversations. Instead of just seeing each other in the shop in the morning, let them sit down for an hour and break bread. And what happened over time is that the installers realize, hey, the sales guys really care about quality too. They just, maybe they're not as technical as we are. And the sales guys started understanding that the installers wanted to do a good job. And so the thing I would change, Tim, is I would just do more of that. Like I used to do it once a month, and I would just do more and more of it. You've got to get people. It's hard to criticize and talk smack about somebody that you know. It's just like social media. It's so easy on social media because you don't know the person. But if you were in a room with them, you'd probably never say the things that people say on social media, right? So I'm sure you've seen plenty of it because I know you're really coming up on the social media side.
It's fun to watch all that. Yeah, the keyboard warrior thing. But yeah, you get basically you get like keyboard warriors kind of in the company because they're not talking.
Right. They're talking to other installers or other salespeople, whatever. So put them in a room, and when things come up, if a sales guy says such and such, say, well, listen, let's get with that installer and let's talk about it. Let's have that conversation. If the installer comes and pissed at some sales guy, let's get in the room and talk about it, right? Because as my dear friend and mentor Stephen Covey used to say, sometimes people don't want to talk to somebody. They want to talk about somebody. That's way more fun. And you can't let that happen. You can't let installers talk about the sales guys and vice versa. When they have a problem, you got to sit them down and say, guys, let's work it out. Over time, that starts eliminating a lot of that conflict.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, I like to break this out of this industry too. It's such a common thing, right? In any business, sales and service, anytime, because, well, one, sales is really fucking important. It's super important to any business. And so you can, I feel like a lot of times the service people know the dynamic with the ownership and
Yeah.
sales and how
Mhm.
it's the favorite child
Right.
sometimes. It's
Yeah.
like, thank you. And like, they've got a lot of thank you notes in the
Right.
form of money. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, and the service is looking over like, man, I just did a
Mhm.
bunch of extra work and he's balling,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and so
No, it's true.
that's the dynamic I think that pops up a little bit in companies. Like, how do you create like a sales centric culture
Yep.
and still
Well,
make sure that other people don't hate them?
yeah. It's a great question, and it's the very first thing I do when I work with an organization. We've been telling technicians and in this industry to go out and sell indoor air quality upgrades, tech turns, whatever, for 30 years now. But the problem is people don't realize is that you might as well be telling technicians to go out and hold customers at gunpoint. Because in their mind, that's what sales is. It's dishonest, it's pressure, it's not good. And so we've got this whole, group of people. If you I've been doing this for 20 some odd years, you put a group of HVAC people in a room and you ask them what's the first word that comes to mind when you say the word salesman, and 70% of the people in every room I've been in this industry have a negative connotation, pushy, high pressure, sleazy. So that's the core perspective on sales in our industry. And it's funny because you say the owners, yeah, the owners are grateful because the revenue that comes in, but stop and think about this. If an owner had 100 service calls, busiest day of the summer, there's never a time where they would walk into their accounting department and go to the receivables clerk and say, "Hey, can you run some service calls for me on the way home?" You would never do that, right? Because it wouldn't work. But when it comes to sales, we'll grab somebody with a pulse and a heartbeat and say, "You're the sales guy, right? Go out there and do it." And they probably got fired from their last sales job because they were lousy. My point is I'm not saying that we need to look at it in the perspective of sales is more important than install and service, but we do have to elevate sales and recognize it's as important as the operation side of the business.
Mm.
And so it's not that we're like, exalting the sales function. My experience in 20 some odd years is that people diminish the value of the sales function. So when I go into an organization, the first thing I do is I'll ask them, what's the first word that comes to mind when I say salespeople? And 70% of the hands will go up. And I say, well, how many of you depend on sales directly or indirectly to feed your family? Every hand goes up. Well, that's a problem. You depend on sales to take care of your family, but fundamentally, you believe that sales is high pressure, sleazy. That's a major conflict. And until we get some alignment and some harmony with our core thoughts about sales and what we're doing with sales out here in the outside world, until you get that harmony, it's a constant battle. So this is why when we go in, the first thing I do is I wrote a book called The Power of Consistency, which is about the mindset. And we teach people how to use those tools to create a healthy sales culture. Until we do that, we're never going to have the success that we want. Because sales, as we know, nothing happens till something gets sold. Nothing gets sold till somebody sets a lead. But until we change the mindset of the people in our organization, we're going to continue to struggle and just beat our heads
Mm.
against the wall that salespeople are high pressure, pushy crooks or whatever. And if there's anything that I say in my companies, we are a sales and marketing company who happens to install air conditioners and furnaces. We are a sales and marketing company first. And when we recruit for people with that sales mindset. If they come in and they've got that old school mindset that somehow it's dishonest, to sell a new system to somebody who's got a 25-year-old system that needs $2,000 of repairs, the absolute wrong thing to do for that homeowner is letting them spend $2,000 on worthless repairs. But we got to have people that see it in the proper perspective.
I dig it. I couldn't help but think. I always say marketing is just sales at scale.
Mhm.
But I think that there's also that same thing. Obviously, we probably think about our thing, but like people have this really negative connotation for marketing or
Mhm.
marketers because they had some bad experiences that were
Sure.
legitimately
Yep.
bad. I'm sorry for all marketers. Sorry. Um, but if you go in with that mindset into every relationship with a marketer, whether they're an external marketer, an agency, or a
Mhm.
sales or like a internal person, a person that's a marketer that you're hiring, if you have this anti-marketing mindset or like it's like the age old thing about we get by on word of mouth, that whole thing too, and just like negative towards this. It's kind of the same energy is the
Mhm.
anti-sales thing. I think people really shoot themselves in the foot because if you don't like, you kind of gotta appreciate it for what it is
Yeah.
to fully get the most out of it. And marketers are a little skittish sometimes. If you like act like they suck all the time, whether the internal
Yeah.
or external, you scare them off or you don't get the most out of them. It's the same with leading anybody, right? Like we want to lead
No,
people, we want to honor the work that they do. It's basically
Mhm.
professionalism. We want to
Right.
like honor the work that you do so that we get the most out of you. Because I'm grateful, I'm appreciative to my employees all the time, and I get more because I actually like give them positive feedback when they do a great job. And I think like whether I think this I had to go off on that limb for a second that sometimes the same negative energy happens towards
Yeah.
marketing people. And we should once you especially once you get good ones,
Yeah.
treat them
No, I
well.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
The marketing and the sales function, again, there's four any business in the world, there's four components. Sales and marketing, finance and accounting, human resources and operations. It's the same four and I've got clients as
Yeah.
big as FedEx and I've got clients as small as a $500,000 HVAC company. It's the same four functions. And for some reason in our industry, by the way, not only the sales and marketing function is diminished and looked down upon, but the finance and accounting function is completely ignored, right? It's like I walk into a company like, how the hell do you sleep at night? You have no idea what's going on in your business. And so they focus on human resources. I need more techs. I need more techs. I need more techs, right? And they focus on the operations, obviously doing the work, but they're ignoring two really critical parts: the sales and the marketing, and also the finance and accounting gets really bad treatment. So that's another thing we do. Like we get in, Gary Alex and I do a lot of consulting projects together. And first thing I do is start working on the sales program. Gary starts working on the annual budget, the business planning, and getting the income statement departmentalized and organized properly. Because until you have that, you don't really know what's going on in your company.
Amen. That's something I'm working on
Yeah.
personally. Ellen Rohr told me I better get to that finance meeting every single week. So I've
Yeah.
been trying to I've been trying to
Yeah.
do that. It is hard because it is not my strength.
Right.
But I'm working on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting back into you're kind of transitioning to talk a little bit about when you get into these companies, you work on the mindset, you work on the habits, discipline, you help them transform into a sales appreciating culture.
Yep.
What's one daily discipline that you still do today that you started back in your living room startup days?
Yeah.
Still a lot of money chasing these transactions. There's still really good outcomes out there for sellers. It's good to have someone like us in your corner because we're not emotional, but guess what? When you're selling your business, it becomes emotional, and so it's really good to have an intermediary, there every step of the way. www.sfpadvisors.com. All the contact information is directly on the website.
Well, I actually started it a number of years before that. I can tell you, it was my father died on June 10th of 1996. I was in federal prison at the time, and I had 7 years left to go. And I went and picked up just out of desperation, 3 or 4 hours after my father passed away, I walked out of my cell house down to this little mop closet. There was a box of books in there, and I started rifling through that box, just trying to find something I could read, maybe just give me some hope, some direction. I mean, I already done 6.5 years. I was a high school dropout. It was just, my whole life was a disaster. I was 32 years old, and I picked up a copy of the classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And not knowing that Stephen Covey would one day become a good friend, he's endorsed my books. His son wrote the foreword to my third book. Um, but I started reading in there about living out of your imagination. Dr. Covey said you can live out of your imagination rather than your past. And that was really big news to me. And from that grew what I teach in The Power of Consistency, to create a prosperity plan, right? A simple plan for the key areas of my life: my money, my relationships, and my health. And I've got 2 or 3 objectives under each one. And then basically, we reach into this box up here 30,000 times a day, according to neuroscientists, right? The problem is a lot of the decisions we're making, the choices we're making, other people put in there 30 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. And people have to learn to stop and think about what they think about before they think about it, because all those thoughts in here are coming out one decision at a time. So what I learned through this process of a quiet time ritual is to make sure that every day I'm filling up my box up here with the things I want in my life, not something my dad put in there 30 or 40 years ago, or my grandfather, or some negative belief about money or relationships or whatever. I want to put in there every single day what I want to execute on. And that becomes my new habitual way of thinking. It's a big part of the neuroscience behind the power of consistency and all that. But that daily quiet time ritual, there's nothing more critical to our success than focus. Focus, focus. James Allen said that dispersion is weakness and concentration is power. He said that 150 years ago. And it's more true today than ever. Concentration is power. Dispersion is weakness. We have so many distractions with all the multimedia crap going on that the key is to stay focused on your family, your income, your customers, your health, your life every single day, and not getting distracted with all the bullshit out there and all the shiny objects, right? And that quiet time ritual conditions the subconscious. It creates a new habitual thought process. We could do a whole series of episodes just on the mindset. But you've got to get focused every day on your key priorities, what you want in your life and what you need to do to get it. And if that has to drive every choice and every decision you make, focus and concentration, which all come from the quiet time ritual. So the thing that I do now is I stay focused every single day on my family, my financial security, my customers, and my health. If I'm working on those 4 things, I'm probably going to be okay.
How about in the trenches, when payroll's tight and stress is high, what does a prosperity mindset mean in that moment?
Well, the prosperity mindset really is a derivative of what's going on in the subconscious mind and kind of our habitual core beliefs and expectations. And I think that when you wake up on a Friday morning at 6 a.m., not sure how you're going to make payroll at noon, the focus, the prosperity mindset would have had you working on that problem a week earlier, right? Because what happens is we've got these dramatic things, these negative things coming up, and we tend to ignore them, and they're not going to go away. You mentioned earlier, you gotta sell and grow your way out of these situations. You just can't spend and borrow your way out of these, out of business to grow it. You've gotta sell your way out at better margins and different things. But I think there's 2 things. Number one, and this reminds me of my son who's in his 30s now, but he'll be in this problem. He's like, well, I don't have any choice. I'm like, right. The choice was a month ago before this happened, right? Well, sometimes people wait till the problem is right there. And then they say, but you're not helping me. I don't have time. Well, you gotta be surveying the landscape a little bit more on those types of things. I have a very simple two financial rules in business: never miss a payroll, never miss a payroll tax payment, because those 2 things will put you under in a heartbeat, right? So we got to be thinking about those things and managing cash flow. When I talk about getting your financial house in order, one of those things is a cash flow statement, right? So you don't get, it doesn't sneak up on you on a Friday morning that you have a $50,000 payroll in 4 hours, right? The other thing is,
Let's switch over to people winning right now. So,
Yeah.
because we're kind of talking about the people that are super tight. Let's say somebody's winning right now. They're at 5 million trying to go to 10, but they're on a roll. They're on a little roll. They're going for it. What are a few things to help them speed that up and maybe compress time to go a little bit faster? Maybe they want to go there in the next few years. They don't want to take, or they want to go there this next year. They don't want to take 5 years to get to 10 million.
listen, if they're at 5 million and they've got their financial house in order, their sales processes, everything's organized, they're making, let's say, maybe 12 to 15% EBITDA, then that's when you call Tim and you say, hey, pour the gasoline on it. Right? I mean, because now you're making the money. I'm not a big fan of borrowing money for marketing, because what if it doesn't work out, right? You borrow money for trucks and people that you already have work to keep busy. That's when you borrow money in a business. This whole idea, I'm not a big Dave Ramsey fan. Dave Ramsey's philosophy, in my estimation, is dream small, you'll never be disappointed. That's not my.
Can we just stop for a second and just admit that Weldon does look a little bit like Dave Ramsey? Just a
I
touch.
guess you could say that. We don't think the same. I got a garage full of classic and exotic cars and stuff, and I owe some money on some of them that are worth more than I paid for them. But Dave Ramsey would disapprove. But I do believe that we should be very careful about borrowing money for marketing. You better have your ducks in a row,
Yeah.
because if you spend that money and it doesn't work, and marketing you're a professional at it. There's no guarantees. There's no guarantee. Here's something that tends to work for us over time, but there's no guarantee it's going to work that week on that day. It just doesn't happen that way.
Oh.
Right. So you got to make sure that if your financial house is in order and you want to grow more quickly, that's when you turn on the marketing spigot. That's when you start cranking.
All right, let's deliver on this title that I had. 3 signs of HVAC lead addiction. What would you say the signs are when somebody's addicted and it's an issue? Because there's nothing wrong with like we said, turning on the marketing hardcore.
Right.
But what means an addiction, and what are 3 signs if you had to give them? I came up with that title out of thin air. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I would say the first thing is begging, borrowing, stealing for pay-per-click money that isn't working. Right? There's
yeah,
an old saying that one of the definitions of insanity is finding something that works and stop using it. Well, the other definition is finding something that doesn't work and keep using it. And I see a lot of small companies beg, borrowing, stealing for pay-per-click because they think they're going to compete with the guy dropping $100,000 a month or $100,000 a week or whatever. So I think one of the signs of addiction is that they're overspending. They're not ready. They're not prepared to capitalize. You know as well as I do, you have to take a longer term perspective on marketing. It's going to work. It always does, but it may take some time. I think that's one thing. Another sign of the disease is zero outbounding. I can't tell you the number of companies. Our phones aren't ringing. Who gives a shit? Make somebody else's phone ring. I was down at one of our companies in Texas a while back, and it was a couple of months ago, and so April or May or something like that. It was very mild, and our strategic partner down there, the owner, is like, the phones aren't ringing, and we got to do some more pay-per-click, and we got to get some more money for that. And I made the mistake of giving him $30,000, which he burned through really quick and didn't change a damn thing. Just because I felt bad for him. But I finally, that was before I went down there. When I went down there, it's like, it's still nothing working. I said, well, how many? It got 7,500 customers. Well, how many are we calling? Well, we're waiting for them to call. No. So I had one conversation with one of his CSRs to do some outbounding. In one day, she set 18 plumbing and HVAC service calls. Outbounding over a few hours, by the way. Right.
That's awesome.
So the key is you got to be outbounding. You can't just wait for the phones to ring. And people who are waiting phones to ring, they have the addiction to leads. They have the addiction to leads. They're spending money they don't have. They're not doing outbounding. And a third.
How about one more?
A third. Let me see. A third symptom of addiction to. Yes, I can tell you. The third addiction is dropping off bids. They don't really have a sales process. They are depending on the volume of leads. I had a guy one time, this was many years ago, when doing $1 million was a big deal in our industry, but this was probably 20 years ago. He goes, yeah, I do $1 million a year. I'm like, well, how many leads do you run? Because to me, it's like the ratio, like what's the revenue per lead? He goes, oh, hell, I don't have an idea. I just go down the interstate, tossing them out the windows, right? So that is a symptom of addiction to leads because, you know, we don't have that luxury anymore. There's a lot of stiff competition out there. The whole industry's gotten better. On your side too, people have gotten better at the marketing side. People have gotten better at the sales side. And so you got to go out there and you got to get better with them. So I would say spending money they don't have on just thinking the genie's going to come out of the bottle on pay-per-click and it's going to make them rich. The other thing would be not doing any outbounding, just depending on the inbound. Like that's just pure laziness. And the third one is they're dropping off bids and they're counting on high volume, rather than high productivity. And listen, you could train a monkey to close 1 out of 3. I mean, just think about it. Basic probability. Average homeowner gets 3 bids. How many do they choose? 1. That means if you're one of the 3, you have exactly a 1 of 3 probability of being chosen. So if you're closing 30 or 33 or 35%, congratulations, you're as good as a monkey that could drop off a bid, right? It's getting the other third, right? Because you've got the value-based consumers, you've got your cheap guys, you've got your undecideds. The undecideds are where all the fertile ground is, right? I'm gonna get the value-based customers, right? But I got to get some of the undecideds, and the undecideds are easy to get because we're talking about the infrastructure of their home, and so it's easy to demonstrate to them that this is not a time you want to go cheap.
I've got
So that
a
would be my
bonus
3.
one.
That would be my 3 characteristics.
I've got a bonus one. If I look at a dashboard and I see there's a lot of revenue out, that's possible, and it hasn't been followed up on.
Yeah,
Right, like
yeah.
follow up, I think, is
Yeah.
an opportunity for a
Well,
lot of companies.
a lot of
Yeah.
unclosed business, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and
exactly.
that's a
So,
reflection of dropping off bids and just being just kind of weak on the sales side.
well, then could I ask you what is a sign that somebody should contact you and work with you or be listening to you more often?
If
Where can they go to check you out too?
if well, weldonlong.com is my website. If you're broke and you're stressed on money and you don't know what's going on in your business, that'd be a clue. I mean, that's what we do. We go in and we teach companies how to organize, first things first, like we mentioned, talking about departmentalize the financials, build an org chart, get a handle on your business, get a visual where you can see it financially and operationally, right? That's the first thing. And then we got to change the sales culture. And yeah, I'm easy to find. I mean, we have programs that are very affordable. We have more expensive on-site programs, but the bottom line is you got to change the sales culture. You got to get clarity on your financials, and you're probably going to have to raise your prices. A lot of small companies have been intimidated by all the price increases we've seen the last 4 or 5 years, and a lot of them have not kept pace with it because they're almost afraid to. Everybody has the same challenges with expensive equipment now. And so, you've got to decide if you're going to go out there. Stephen Covey used to say, if you want to be successful in business, you have to have high courage and high consideration, right? High courage is that you demand what you need for your company to be successful. High consideration is consideration for the homeowner and that you're going to do the right thing by them. A lot of people, though, Tim, they have low courage and high consideration, right? They don't demand what they need out of it for their company's revenue, right? But they want to make sure and give the deal of the century to the homeowner. So they've got high consideration for their homeowners, but they have low courage for themselves. And the balance is you got to have both, right? Otherwise you become a doormat. So the high consideration is great, but you have to have high courage to have the tough conversations with the homeowners, price your goods and services at a fashion that's going to keep you out of the poorhouse.
It's a great note to end on. Appreciate you being part of this. The podcast is put on by hookagency.com, Hook Agency all over social media. Thank you everyone for watching. See you.
Thanks, Tim.